2018 be approved.
Seconder, Councillor Monroe. Any further questions? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'll look to the committee for direction on item number 3. Councillor Buckingham.
With the Governance and Priorities Committee minutes dated May 22nd, 2018 be approved.
Seconder, Councillor Thorson. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to item number 4, administration reports. I'll look to the city manager.
Good afternoon, Your Worship Council. I'd like to call Joel Turcotte forward to present item 4.1.
Good afternoon, Joel.
Good afternoon. So, Lakeland College Facility User Agreement. I'm here to speak to today. Administration has been approached by Lakeland College students to again renew the access agreement that we have in place with them. This agreement allows for access to students, full-time students at Lakeland College, Lloydminster campus, to gain access to the Service Sports Center and the Bioquin Aquatic Center for a reduced rate and a $5 administration fee. I have spoken with the Director of Recreation of Lakeland already and have verbally agreed to some fees as outlined in the administration report. And so I'm here to see if you have questions or to bring forth an agreement at the next council meeting.
The information is presented. Any comments or questions to the from council? Councillor Kessler.
Just a comment. So, Joel, they just do an overall payment for all the students, so that any student that wants to go is part of the package when they go to college?
Absolutely. So every full-time student pays a fee through their Lakeland College bill, and so we get a list of eligible full-time students at the centers, which we cross-reference when they come in with their ID badge. The students are then charged a $5 administration fee at our till.
So do we know what the administration fees were last year? Like how many people participated?
I could look into that.
I'm kind of curious.
Yeah.
It looks like they paid for 470 students, so that would be just be interesting to see how many you're using it.
Yep, I could absolutely find that number
Sure.
for the future.
Thank you.
Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you, Your Worship. My question was, what about the other post-secondary or continuing education groups that we have in town? Have they ever approached, have we ever approached, has there ever been any interest in making those same fees and opportunities available to every post-secondary that we have in the city? Lakeland College, of course, being the biggest, but there are more than one. The idea of fairness and reaching out, I wondered if that had ever been explored.
To my knowledge, we have never reached out to any of the other schools or post-secondaries in the city. And to my knowledge, no one else has ever approached the city as well.
I just wonder if it shouldn't be out there. You know, it's an opportunity.
Councillor Thorson.
Sorry, I just wanted to follow up on that question. Is there not a student discount though, even if you are post-secondary? Because I remember back in 08, I used to get a student discount even though I didn't know Lakeland or anything like that. So that is still an option that exists, correct?
Absolutely, there are student, we do have approved student fees
Right.
that high school students or post-secondary students who show a valid ID can get. That is correct. The Lakeland College is a little different because it's all their full-time students we get at revenue, regardless if they go to the gym or not.
Okay, yeah, so that was the part that that Councillor Fagnan had asked that I wasn't super clear on still. So this is more or less a fixed fee for all Lakeland College students based on the total enrollment at this dollar per student that you get no matter whether they actually sign up in the end or not?
All full-time students, yes. That belong to the Lakeland,
Yeah.
the Lloydminster campus.
Okay. No, sounds like a pretty good gig considering that. Yeah, no, it just sounds like a good plan all around. See why we wouldn't continue to do it, and so long as everyone's on board with the rates we've proposed, because it looks as though they've been agreed upon through administration at Lakeland, that sounds like a good deal to me. Thank you.
Just to further that, it's a great partnership between Lakeland College and the City of Leominster, where they're providing recreational facilities to their students to use, and in return the city gets those memberships. It's charged on the administration fee for the college students, and in turn the college turns that straight over to us. So my understanding through this process, not all the students are coming in and accessing our facility, so it is bringing some additional revenue to the city, so there's an advantage there, as well as the advantage to Lakeland College about providing a higher level of service to their students.
Councilor Thorson.
The only other item that I just wanted to be clear on, so what period does this cover? That's for a whole year, is for the $50?
Yeah, that's correct. It'd be the entire school year.
Okay.
That answers all my questions. Any other questions, comments? Councilor Baker.
I'd like to make a motion if it's in order.
Actually, it isn't, Council, because we're just gathering, so this will come back to Council from that perspective. Yeah, it will come back as a, to Council, possibly the next meeting. I'm not sure what this agenda is, but we wanted to make sure that we were aware of this. I think as Executive Manager Standing brought forward, we have a great relationship.
If I may, it was just the way it was worded, the options. Committee request administering back a new Lakeland College user agreement.
I think
Are you bringing that to council? Is that what I'm reading?
That's correct. We'd have to bring that to council in the future.
Okay, we don't need a motion to do that then, okay. Okay, that's fine.
No, I appreciate where you're at, Councilor. That's, yeah, the option, like I said, if we needed to send it back to, if there was more questions and answers,
Yeah.
certainly that way. Where I was saying, I think the relationship that was indicated is very strong with Lakeland College and the city, and for the campus at Lloydminster, and their reach of service that those students, and hope to encourage them to become residents of our city after they complete their education here. It's a wonderful opportunity to showcase the amenities that our city offers, and certainly recreation and leisure activities that they can partake in. So I think that based on what you've heard from the administration, our council today, as the governor's priorities, I think we'll look forward to seeing this come forward and hopefully get 3 more years and then be able to do it again. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item 4.2. Joel.
Thank you. My next thing to present today is the Bud Miller All Seasons Park Tennis Court lighting upgrade. Administration has been approached by the Lloydminster Tennis Association requesting a project where we could upgrade the lighting to both LED and to cover the 2 additional courts there. The Tennis Association has put forth some numbers and written us a letter that implies that they would like to work with the city's sponsorship team to sell several different sponsorships at the tennis courts and use some of those funds to actually pay to upgrade those lights. Under the proposed project that the Tennis Association has requested that they would manage the entire project. The city would seek out sponsorship, and also take in the money and give that to the association when the money comes in. I think that's the other information, the most important information that is possible. The other side of that could be that the city could do this project themselves with the sponsorship funds and then manage it, and it would go under our procurement policy, and would have to go through that as well. I do today have Rod Choplin with me. He's the president of the Tennis Association, so please ask as many questions you want, and Rod's here if I don't have the answers for some reason.
I guess I can kick this off with this. One question I had, I like the proposal. Certainly the concern I've got is who assumes the liability for the project. Because if the contractor then working for the tennis association, it's on city property, it's a city-owned facility, so the city becomes liable, I believe. That's just my understanding. So I need some more clarification how we ensure that it's a great project, but there's always liability in everything we do, and ensuring that that's covered. So can you give us some direction on how administration sees that liability factor?
The city would definitely be working with the tennis association to get an agreement put in place so that it would, that their association would be in charge of the project. Now, as far as the legal aspect of contracts and insurance, I'm not sure I could answer that at this minute. Possibly city clerk.
Clerk?
Ultimately, the city can't assign its liability to anybody. Once whatever project's done in whatever formats it's done, the city would have to accept the work as being proper and safe. And at that point, we would assume all the liabilities for whatever the work is.
Councilor Baker, I'll get you, and then I'll get to Councilor Fortson.
Thank you, Your Worship. On page 1 of the report, the first bullet, it says, City of Lloydminster sponsorship team will manage and administrate the sponsorship for the lighting project. And then it goes on to say that the tennis club will outline certain things to that committee. So who's really looking for the sponsors? Like, how is the city connected with the sponsorship? That's question 1. And the second question on page 2, the last bullet just before the objective said the Lloyd Tennis Association is responsible for managing and administrating the project. I have some confusion in this report. I'm not sure who's liable, and I'm not sure how it's going to get financed. Like, do we go out and do 6 tennis courts? Who pays the bill?
So, to get to your first question about sponsorship and how it works. So the Tennis Association has already have some people who are interested in sponsoring different levels. So they'd be working with the sponsorship team to kind of lead them to those individuals. The sponsorship agreements would be between the city and the sponsors. And this will ensure that for as many years as they're sponsored there, that we take care of those sponsors. As far as the actual project goes, the Lloydminster Tennis Association will be dealing with managing the actual project, making sure that they have the company to do that, the electrical company, getting the right things. Of course, the city will ensure that they have the proper permits and that they follow the safety of what we need. But managing the project is the Tennis Association. And then the sponsorship part, the Tennis Association for sure will help us, but the agreements will be between the city and the sponsor.
So on the financing of this project, what's the intent? Like, say, a month from now, start the project, or a year from now, or when you raise the money, or?
Yeah, so the Tennis Association has some funds already. The major part of the project is actually buying the lights and that kind of thing. So that's going to happen first. And like I said, they've got some people lined up interested in sponsorship already. So when we have the funds, we'll transfer them over to the city because the first year of those sponsorships will be.
Does it start after you have the money raised, or what?
So my understanding, Councillor Baker, is the city, next step, the city would enter, well, next step would actually bring it to council for approval before we go to the next level. Next step between city and the tennis association would be to enter into a form of an agreement, whether that be an MOU or an actual contract. Within that agreement, there would be some indications around when money would be distributed from the sponsorship back to the tennis association. There would be some verbiage around liability. There would be some expectations with regards to purchasing of the equipment, all laid out in that agreement. That agreement we're hoping to have kind of drafted for when we bring it to council on June 25th. Our expectation is that this is a zero cost to the city. The Tennis Association will bring forward the sponsors who are ready to put money towards this capital infrastructure. Those agreements will be entered into with the City of Lloydminster. in year one, there would be enough revenue generated to pay for the cost plus the 30,000 the tennis association is willing to put up of their own dollars. And then in year 2 and 3 of the sponsorship agreements, the city would have some additional revenue that we could put towards other initiatives within the city.
So bottom line, the city in turn finances the project.
Nothing, the city wouldn't have any obligation to provide funds to the tennis association until the 41, help me with that number there, Joel, 42,000 was collected in sponsorship revenue.
No, but in reality, if the money's not there, the city would in turn finance it.
We're not willing to intern finance, or that could be an option if council would like us to consider that, but that hasn't been discussed to date. Essentially, the tennis association has some funds currently available that they would use for purchasing the lights. The sponsorship, in my understanding, through conversation with Director Turcotte, is that a lot of the sponsorships are ready to be signed into agreements with revenue coming in. Once that revenue has been collected by the city would then transfer that funding from the sponsorship to the tennis association to pay for the remainder of the project.
So I'm just crystal clear myself on that question. We're not financing this, is the current plan that's being proposed by administration. There's no taxpayer money involved at this time.
That is how I understand it, Your Worship. That's how I.
Does that answer your question, Councilor Baker? Okay, Councilor Thorson, then Councilor Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So far, really good questions because it's answered most of what I wanted to know. I think, based on what I'm hearing, it's a slam dunk. There was a problem, and we were brought with a solution. And even the process of looking for sponsors isn't something where we're putting a bunch of burden on the city. It's just going through the city's helping through the formal processes of actually getting those advertising agreements done, which is fantastic. So far, everything looks awesome, phenomenal. My only big question is, when we talk about city safety standards, as far as I know, the city normally requires core certification. Are we expecting that the Lloydminster Tennis Association has core certification to be able to manage and administer the construction?
That's a question we can take back and discuss.
I can answer that question.
Can I,
Yeah, Mr. Shopland, if you'd like to join us.
SWP Electric is going to manage the program for us. They're core certified.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilman Rowe.
So, even though it's being funded through the tennis association, because it actually is city property, does this, they can just give the reward of the application to SWP, they don't have to put it out for RFP?
Yes, that is correct. Essentially, the city's not doing the work. It's a third party is bidding to do the work, so it's not part of our purchasing policy, and it is something that we have discussed as administration. Alternatively, if the city were to put out a bid for this, the cost would be significantly higher from what I understand. Mr. Shopland has talked about some services being in gift in kind and labor and those types of things. So cost effectively, this makes the most sense from a financial perspective. Being as a third party, it falls outside our purchasing policy, so the city wouldn't be publicly tendering.
Perfect. I just want to make sure that through policy, because it's a city facility, but you can explain it well. Perfect.
Councilor.
I think it's a great project. It's a win-win. It doesn't cost the city anything, and I give the Tennis Association full kudos for coming up with that type of a project, and I hope others catch on to that and try doing it themselves.
Councilor Becky.
Just a question I had. I can't stand here or sit here and say that it comes at no cost to the city unless I'm missing something. Because I would say, if I read this right, and I've asked them to make sure that I'm clear, our sponsorship team's time is worth something, right? So technically, we can't sit here and say that it's at zero cost to the city. If we're expecting our sponsorship team to be involved in it, there is some there. And I just wanted to put that out there because we're not putting direct dollars out and we're not financing and we're not doing those things. That's absolutely correct. But I can't say it's no cost.
Yeah, that's a fair statement.
Hard dollars, soft dollars, some might refer to it as, because it is staff time that's involved to ensure that. Good point, Councilor. Good point. I guess the last point I'd like to raise, if a business that hasn't been approached by the Lloyd Tennis Association is interested in being a sponsor, who do they speak to? I think it's just for the public's information. There's been in the past questions, well, I didn't know that opportunity existed. I just want to make sure that if there's a question raised, I have that answer, council members and administration. So who is the direct person that's most responsible for this project? Yourself, Joe?
If we go ahead with this project, in the council, it's agreed that we enter into an agreement with the Tennis Association. If there's anybody that's ever interested in sponsorship anywhere within the city, our sponsorship coordinator, Sam, would be the person they should contact.
Okay. Well, excellent. I just want to make sure, like I say, on public record for people that say that this project or something else is of interest, let's make sure we get the right people to the right people. Absolutely. Any other questions? Oh, sorry. Councilor.
Thank you, Your Worship. When this item does come back to council for a decision, I'd be interested in knowing, even as an estimate, what the soft costs will be. I think that would be handy because, you know, my best guess is probably at most $1,000, $2,000 worth of time. So to get $71,000 worth of lighting upgrades for the soft cost that is that, I think it's good for the public to know because it's, you know, as part of the money ball of getting a good upgrade and something that's going to save this city money in the long run as far as using LED lights rather than the regular ones. I think it's useful information. Thank you.
Councilor.
Your Worship, thank you. Some staff time helping out with the project is not an issue at all with me. We're not going to lay our staff off because we don't do this job. They're going to be here anyway. And what I like about it is we have a group of people who want to do something. They're saying they're going to finance it, they're going to pay for it, all the hard costs. And all we're going to do is assist in the legal process and the administrative process required to meet that. That's nothing in the big picture, and I think it's a great proposal now that I understand it better. And you've said that the tennis club is going to move forward, and any overruns, they'll find a way to deal with that. And, you know, whether it's a perfect plan, it doesn't really matter. The thing is that people are willing to help themselves, and that's what I like to see. Rather than it's just a handout. Say, well, the taxpayers should pay for everything. And I think that's admirable from any group that does that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Questions? Thank you very much, Joel. Don't go too far about this. So, moving on to item 4.3. Back to the city manager, through Joel.
Thank you. Finally, my last report to share with you today. The 2017 Pinty's Grand Slam of Curling. We have a little bit of an update. As you know, we hosted this in October of 2017. We had a massive amount of volunteers from the community, 150. So we've shown some financials this time. The revenues of almost 275,000, expenses of just over 225,000, with an overall net profit of just under $50,000. We're recommending that we put this amount in a reserve account, and that administration will work with the committee that was in charge of putting on the event, and use that funds for a future project. Once they've discussed it and have a project in mind, we would come back and have those recommendations at a council meeting.
Questions or comments? Councilor Pegg.
Well, I think that here again, it's it was a fantastic event to have in the city. It brings the community and the fans and volunteers together. We're covered on national TV showcasing our city and an economic boost to the community. So, and it's also promoting a sport perhaps in our community that is hurting a little bit as far as the numbers go, and it may give a little bit of a boost there. So I think it was a great event, and it's nice to see a $50,000 profit. It's not a bad day.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, it's a ways out. I know we've said it in the past, but hats off to everybody. And we had volunteers from not just in our community, we had people coming in from Vermilion to volunteer for this event. And the stands were full. You look at the event that was held down 2 weeks or a month later, and our event was jam-packed compared to what we saw in some of the other TV coverages there. It'd be really interesting to know, and I don't know if we can put our finger on it at all, the actual economic impact that was had by the city, because the $50,000 profit on the event is great. But it'd be really interesting to know what else, because I know a lot of people that came to town for that, including the curlers, and they were raving about how they were treated in our restaurants, in our local stores, all of those things. So, you know, for me, anytime we can have an event like this come to town, it's something we need to get behind, because it has such a bigger economic impact than what we see in this report. That's one piece of it. It's a great piece. But just hats off to everybody and every shop owner and restaurateur and everything in town. Everybody raved about their treatment here. So it speaks to our community, the volunteers, and it was exceptional.
Councilor Baker.
First, I guess I'll have to talk to my learned friend here. The accounting system, I don't quite follow. What's the diamond and what does that mean?
I can answer that, Councilor. As our systems, we had a change of systems last November, and so Astrid was the system that we used. So bills that were paid up till the end of October, I believe. I'll let the city administration confirm that. In November, we moved to Diamond, so we actually paid 2 sets of bills and we had income in 2 under both systems. So that's
okay.
That's
the arena rental. Where would you find that in here? As an expense.
The arena rental is actually paid by Pinty's actually paid for the arena rental. They had to pay that. So that's additional revenue brought into the city. It didn't come out of this committee. Pinty's actually had to pay that.
I don't know how it's set up.
Yeah, that's a good question, Council. So, okay. So that was a separate item then under, okay.
Okay, thanks. I just don't know that.
Councilor Dorsey.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an accounting question here. So I apologize in advance. Is there any reason that we know that our cost of goods sold on the food was 73%, which is really, really, really high? Like, and we've seen in other reports, and I realize it's a special event. It's not you know, the same as like the golf course operations, but the golf course operations in that operational review talks about 35%, and we're at 73%. I was just curious if there's any information around that.
I don't have that information, but I can absolutely look into that for you.
It just seems odd to me, but other than that, more to the point of why this is in here, which I don't think is necessarily for that purpose, but you know, it's a great event, and I'm glad that we made some money off of it. I'm just curious if there's anything out of the operational review as far as information from the curling associations as to what to spend the money on in terms of a legacy project.
So you mean the operational review itself, or what's the
well, either or, whether you've gotten any feedback as far as what the 49,877 should be spent on in terms of a legacy project moving forward.
Yeah, there's been several things discussed at the time. We're just trying to close in which one and how that's going to work. So it might be a part of a bigger project later on, or it might not be. So they're still kind of trying to figure out which way to go and how the operational review works into that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? again, hats off to the team. Joel, I think it speaks for itself. When we put on an event like we did on a national basis, it's terrific that at the end of the day we had a profit. Sometimes it doesn't always happen that way, but a lot of hard work went into it by a lot of people, the committee, the volunteers, and the community, and hats off to those people. So thank you very much. And, it's always nice to have a legacy left after the event, and certainly I think you're ready to bring it back to council for a good direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item 4.4, the city manager.
Thank you, Worship. I'll call Catherine Boucher to discuss item 4.4, Alberta.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon.
On May 22nd, during a GPC meeting, Bob Biscalco of Alberta Hub formally invited or asked the City of Lloydminster to join Alberta Hub. Alberta Hub promotes and facilitates economic development within the region. They have 3 core objectives, as Bob explained then investment and business growth within the region, regional collaboration and community readiness for investment, and marketing and communication. The Alberta Hub aims to develop a competitive, diversified economy for the member communities in the region, and there's 40+ members within Alberta Hub. The next biggest task would be Cold Lake. Questions?
One question I had, in the background, we talked about an option to prorate the membership for 2018, and that was one thing that wasn't laid out as an option. Do you have a number of what would it be, basically 50%?
Yeah, absolutely, depending on when we decided to commit. I talked to Bob, and he said that they would prorate it based on, so if it was halfway through the year, it would be half.
Go ahead.
Sorry, there's no time commitment. This is something we can renew on a yearly basis.
Absolutely, yes. From what I understand, we haven't been a member since 2011. So there's a few options on the table here. One, we budget for have for next year. 2, we decide to be a member this year and have the membership prorated. Or 3, we kindly not accept the invitation for membership.
Councilor Biden.
Thank you, Worship. I think it's worth noting there too in his presentation that it's a per capita fee. That's where they come up with their how much it costs to belong. But it's actually less than, we might pay less than a smaller community in the grand scheme of things because they capped it at 10. Because when I did the math on it, it was just about 17,000 by their per capita cost. So it is a little cheaper that way. You know, we've looked at different things and different organizations we've been involved in, and we've backed out of a few of those things in favor of things that are more local, economically development driven. So I think it's something that we should certainly consider. When we backed out of the other one that we did, had we budgeted, I can't remember, had we budgeted that fee into 2018 budget at the time?
Is that the Yellowhead Association?
Yes.
It's $5,000, I believe.
And just had we budgeted that in 2018 that we had spent now because we reversed that?
Yes, that would be correct. We did not modify the budget as a result of the decision at that time. So the budget was already approved and we were coming back to the association.
So in new budget spend, this is a $5,000 touch, basically, not 10 in that regard.
Well, we actually budgeted at $8,600 because we budgeted for travel time and for extra for the counselor.
So yeah, in essence, it would be over the membership. Now, you also have to realize on page 2 of this report, it does talk about there is some travel costs because they do ask for that. So it's a wash in essence from that, from the additional outside the membership. It would wash very similar to what we're at with the we would have been with the Yellowhead Association, but dollar for dollar. I'm hearing we have that $5,000 basically that hasn't been allocated at this point if we were to so choose.
And I just think it's worth, following up to that, just worth noting that this council is looking at opportunities and, looking at the ones that we're currently enrolled in and the ones that we should be, right? So we're kind of turning over every stone, looking at all of it, and keeping budget in mind to go with that. So just wanted to have that out there, that it wasn't suddenly another $10,000 unbudgeted item, because that's not truly the case.
Absolutely.
It could be read that way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Councilor Torres?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think when you put the, let's say, the Yellowhead Association and the Alberta Hub side by side in terms of the budget hitting this year and comparing that to what you could get out of it and what it could actually mean to the city of Lloydminster, I think there's significantly more value in thinking about moving towards Alberta Hub than the one that we already dropped. But overall, the point being is, as a region, you know, I think we benefit from all of the economic development that goes within our kind of economic catchment area. So by joining this, we're really just putting our money where our mouth is as far as saying that. So thank you.
Councilor Baker?
Thank you, Your Worship. I kind of view this similar to the Yellowhead. And when we dealt with the Yellowhead, I spoke on that, and I think I referred to council, but I believe it was excuse me, an important place for us to be across the province. It's a bigger picture. I don't think the fees are the big issue right now. We can join in 19 if you want, or whatever, if you decide. But what's really important here, that you have a place at the table. You can't sit back and complain about this road or that road, or do this or that, and not be involved. You gotta put something up and be part of it. And the Yellowhead is no different. We chose what we did, and I hope that it'll be reconsidered someday by council, this, whatever, one in the future, because I think it's a never-ending struggle to keep the Yellowhead up, just like the north-south route up. We all know if you've driven 36 highway, we need a lobby, and a big lobby. There's parts of that highway that are deteriorating, and whether it helps for us to be a partner or not, but let's put it this way, it's not going to help if we're not. So I wish you'd look at those things in the big picture, not just what's good for Lloydminster, but what's good for our province. And that's the way I'd like to see you look at it. And what we develop out of it, and what benefits we gain, it's like advertising. You never know when it happens. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. Councilor Thorson?
Thank you, Your Worship. One of the other things that I think is important that we need to, and we've said it in other sessions, but is find a way to kind of get an idea of what deliverables ought to be for our membership, though, and have something measurable where we can go back to ratepayers and say, okay, there's value in this activity. I think too often when you do sign up for these things, there's a little vagueness around that, and I know just we have to do a better job of finding a way to prove the value of some of the activities we're doing. Thanks.
Councilor Rowe?
I'm just wondering if there's a Saskatchewan equivalent to this.
Not exactly equivalent to Hub. There is regions, but I don't believe they have a membership fee. There's something that I can partake in without
Without having it. Okay, perfect.
Councilor Buckingham?
Thank you, Worship. Just to piggyback on Councilor Baker's comments, the Yellowhead Highway Association, for example, the hub kind of comes over top of that as well, because they do lobby to work on things like that. They've talked about 36 Highway, they've talked about the Yellowhead, so it does kind of overlap in that regard as well. So just want to have that.
And I'll throw my 2 bits in on the Yellowhead discussion, because it kind of has some interest in the round. One of the present chairman for this year, and I spoke a couple different times at meetings in Halifax and in Edmonton. He is going to be making a tour, and I'm looking forward to that visit when it comes to talk about the Yellowhead. And I'm certainly going to try and engage council, the Chamber of Commerce, and interested parties in the community, so that we can see if he gets a better understanding, because he realizes there's challenges. Membership, as we were not the only ones that withdrew, so that organization is Is that a turning point? And I hope for their sake they can turn it the right way, but we'll find out in the near future. So it has been, that's a very discussion that was at this table has occurred in other councils, towns, villages, and cities, and it's still ongoing. So there, we'll see if Paul Smith is a councillor from the Strathcona County. He's chairing the board, and he hopes to make a tour out this summer. He said, I'm going to try and hold him to that. I know where to find him. He's a former resident of the Marwayne area. We're up there, so he's got some family roots in this part of the world, so looking forward to his visit. But on this subject, I think that this is well covered. Thank you very much, Captain. From the perspective, I think Bob gave us a good idea of what we're looking at, and we'll leave it to council to set some direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item, 4.5, I'll look to the city manager.
I'll ask Dave Henning to come forward and present item 4.5.
Good afternoon, Dave.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the upgrade of our current street sweepers, which was part of our 2018 capital budget. We bought our street sweepers in 2011. We're currently running about 4,200 hours on each one, and we expect another 400 to 500 hours for new ones arrive if we purchase them. Industry standard is kind of, if you get rid of them between 4,000 and 5,000 hour mark, they retain a pretty good dollar value. We held our other ones quite a bit longer than that and had very poor resale on them, so we're trying this year to do it. And we've had some really strong offers for street sweepers this year also. So we had 6 replies, 5 submissions, and we cut that down to 3, and we did demos on all 3. And we sat down with the crews after and went over everything. So the request for proposals were sent out on March 8th through everybody, the SAS tenders and everything, and we shortlisted them, and a future council meeting will bring up the evaluation and the recommendation decision.
Questions, comments? Councilor Fagan.
I know we were talking before as far as they used to be staggered. Every year you get a new one over a 3-year period, and is that not how they did the street sweeper? So it's all three at once?
Yeah. We initially had in 2011, we actually ran with 2 before that, and then we purchased 3 in 2011. And before that, we had ran 2 each session for probably 3 full months.
Is there any advantage on buying staggered?
The only problem with buying staggered, sometimes if you get 3 different models of sweepers, and sometimes you don't have the buying power also for that. If we get 3 different ones, we'd be training our crew on 3 different street sweepers, stocking different parts for possibly 3 different ones also.
Good, Councilor Baker.
Yes, please, if I may. Dr. Dave, you don't have a reserve for these, eh? No, that's the unfortunate part. You're buying them all in 1 year, there's a real advantage in some worlds buying a bunch at a time. I mean, if you want to buy 3 sweepers at once, this is averages 310,000 a sweeper if your budget's what, 930,000. If you buy one, it might be 340,000.
That's correct.
For all I know. But I know through business, volume, you get volume discounts. And this may not be the time, Your Worship, but we got to think about some reserves. So every year, we might put some money in that reserve, so it doesn't have to come out of 1 year's budget. We really have to think about that.
Yep.
Because we get clobbered with $1 million bill, you might say, in 1 year for one product. And I'm not criticizing, I know what's happened, and I don't like it. I think that you have to plan. And you folks know 3 years from now that probably you're going to have to do this, and this. So under the circumstances, I have to trust your judgment and what you're doing. But I really hope, Your Worship, that we can spend some time trying to get some things set up here so that it's not these huge whacks on every time we open one of these files and plan some of those. Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer that. And I think one of the practices we've gone away from in previous years is whether it's a contribution to reserve or it's a internal rent cost that, you know, every hour that's used is charged a certain amount, and then the money you have at the end of the day would go back into the cost of street sweeper. So that's one of the things we are looking at in our financial system, to get back into that practice. And so council should see more 2019 budget around that.
I'm sure you're doing that. It's just, it's a perception and say, what the heck's going on here?
Well, absolutely, because I think capital, I think we can all agree that capital is needed, but where does the capital come from? And this isn't the first one. We've just dealt with a land compactor out of the landfill. I'm sure Director Dave will be back and saying that in 2 years, or whatever that number is, in our capital planning through asset management, we need to replace X number of dump trucks. It might be I said X number. We will, and you know, every piece of equipment in this, we've talked about this council chamber since we've been elected. Everything over $1,000 is a capital purchase, and figuring that out and putting that into play accordingly, having either capital purchase reserve, or however we want to play that through the budgeting process. We'll look to our chief financial officer for some direction, and city manager and the team in a whole, to how do we kind of massage that to a point that it's not as big a hit, if that's possible, but at the end of the day, it's going to take money from somewhere. So we either have to save that money to get to that point, or it'll come out as we've done at this point, capital budget every year. Because we seem to need equipment every year. There's replacements ongoing continuously. So I think it's a very good point, Councillor, and I think that's, you know, can we, in that whole budget planning cycle, from a financial perspective, I think the taxpayers would like to know what's coming, and that's where we want to be. That's where we want to be. Councillor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So you don't have to give away how much the trade-in is in case there's some kind of negotiations, but first, is this 930 a net of a trade-in, or that's just the value of the purchase?
That's what we budgeted for, considering basically what we got at a trade-in for other ones. So the actual budget with the purchase is going to be a lot cheaper. And I'm not in any negotiations. We did receive a quote of $110,000 for trade-in.
Okay, so here's my question. So let's say that's 66% of the value you lose over 8 years. And then we're talking about budgeting reserves so that you can deal with these big purchases. If we're using about 66 or 75% of the value of the asset every go around when we do a purchase and then sale, is there an option to lease where you would get to essentially the same point, but it's not as big of a budget hit?
The only issue with releasing or leasing on specialized equipment like this is you can't get the people in to do the service work. There's no street sweeper companies in Lloydminster, so when you lease, they like to do a lot of the work and the warranty work, daily service work sometimes. City of Edmonton does do a lease program. The company is situated in Edmonton, and they service them like every second day.
So we're saying though that they wouldn't come to Lloydminster to service, or they wouldn't set up shop if they had one person living here as their mechanic in Lloydminster.
Yes, that's correct.
Service, they wouldn't do that?
No, it wouldn't be feasible for the city of Lloyd. The cost, even the city of Edmonton costs are pretty high, and they are currently using 35 units.
Okay.
And we are looking at 3.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure that we've considered the leasing option, because it would deal in effect with the $930,000 hit and would spread it over a number of years, so that you're not taking such a big hit all at once all the time. What I'm seeing is you're using about the same amount of value as you normally do in a lease, which 75% is kind of the magic number. But it's all good then. Thank you.
If we get into like progressing with our reserve and stuff too, then it's not going to be a hit, because each department will be paying accordingly to the use of the equipment.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Director Dave, is 7 years approximately the lifespan that we're getting to a sweeper based on these numbers, are very close to that?
Currently, that's where we're getting. Industry standard does kind of base it on hours a little bit, but right now that's where we're getting about 7 years out of it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Well, we'll look forward to that coming back and ready to buy some new iron.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 4.6, the city manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll call Stan Howard to deal with 4.6, the DART plan terms and reference.
Good afternoon, Your Honor and Council. The intent of this presentation is just to put before the committee the downtown area development plan advisory committee in terms of reference for input. Now, the purpose of the downtown ARP committee is to provide advice, to identify resources and offer suggestions on the project's development and implementation. It's anticipated that the committee will meet as required. Now, based on what we're proposing to the committee today, or actually presenting before the committee today, the roles and responsibilities of this committee include, one, serving as the project advocates for the DART plan, and that's a very essential part of this component of this DART project. Then extending awareness and engagement through participation in communication opportunities and providing advice to council and the DART project team on aspects of the project referred to it by the project or plan implementation team. That means the term of these committee is going to extend beyond the plan preparation. It's going to extend to the implementation of the plan itself. Then responding to requests for information, data, or resources. Sometimes we need some things, and because either these ones they are stakeholders and they have information, we can gather one from them easily. Then offer ideas. We always love ideas, especially when it comes to identity. Offer ideas, guidance, and suggestions regarding project deliverables, and that will include the public engagement component, the project implementation, funding strategies, propose improvements to the downtown, and as well as the framework for implementing the project, and then establish committees as necessary. Now, this is supposed to be a non-voting committee. It's not good, because one thing we don't want, especially when you have a project like this, is have another layer of bureaucracy beyond council to make decisions for the people. So they are just going to be providing advice to council. Now, the membership, although in the paper we prepared, we had a number of committees or members in those committees, but we want to maybe suggest that the membership of this committee be limited to 9 rather than having such a large number, so that we will be comprised of one council representative, maximum of 5 or 3 to 5 members representing downtown businesses and property owners, maximum of 5 representing the arts, the culture, faith, and Aboriginal groups, and then a maximum of 2 representing seniors and youth groups. So this is what we have. Now, like I said, members of this committee will serve as advocates and ambassadors for the DART. Their roles and responsibilities as defined. The option is just for the committee to review these and provide us feedback on this, and possibly help us establish the number for. Okay, sorry.
How's that committee chosen? Like, how do people apply to it? So, how are we going to pick the 5 members representing downtown business owners?
Usually, because this is a public committee, it's going to be necessary for it to be advertised. So it's
right.
So
is there applications, and then council will go through the applications, or what's the process of that?
Well, I think administration, I don't know if it's going to be the responsibility of council to do.
Or the responsibility of administration.
It's going to be administration's responsibility to review those applications and then report to council on at least on maybe observations or anything that they have. And maybe when the short list are made, then they're presented to council.
Right, just in case we have 10 business owners that want to apply for those positions, are they going to have to put in an application? Are we going to have criteria for that?
Thank you. What we'll do is we'll figure out that process over the next couple of weeks, and there will be a competitive process. If there's we'll invite applications, we'll also through that person, and we'll also speak to some people, and we'll fill out an application, and then we will decide on names.
Excuse me, could they use the mic, please?
Is it turned on?
Sorry.
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah, so then we would either just, vet the applications through the ELT committee or through the city manager and then to council.
Just because I foresee there actually being quite a bit of interest in the participation for this certain board, so I was just wondering what the criteria would be. Thank you.
Councilor Torres, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Two questions. First one is just as far as the split between the representation on the board of having 5 downtown business owners, 5 members of the other group, and then 3 of the other one. I'm just wondering, was there a lot of thought put into the proportions as far as of who's on there? I just have concerns that it may be possibly business-like in terms of, and you don't want too many people on the board, I get that. It's impossible to get anything done, discussion goes on for forever, but I just wonder if the proportions are perfect.
Well, there were a number of factors to consider, especially in terms of establishing this. The RFP we put out, we actually have listed all what we call the stakeholders and then partners. And what we're trying to do is to establish a balance between that, but we mindful of the fact that the ones who have real vested interest in what's going on in the downtown are business owners in there. So making sure we at least we apportion that many numbers at least to them. Then there's one thing in terms of what we're calling a very intense and very interesting downtown. That's the arts, the culture, the history. Those are the mix that we wanted in. And so what we have done is create our property owners and business owners, and then go to the art, culture, and the faith community, so that at least they too can have some participation in the community. But that's the layer of decision-making strategy that went into how many numbers do we apportion to.
So that sounds, fun enough. It's probably, there's been some, it sounds like there's been enough thought put into it that there was a specific number for a specific reason, and that's kind of what I wanted confirmation of. The other question is just on the non-voting committee. So I'm just curious on the process. So how does anything get recommended to the next level without some sort of voting process? Or is it just that the votes aren't necessarily binding on anything? It still has to go to council or some other level to actually have anything happen with it?
Now, if I may just answer that was put in there to be exactly right, the second piece what you said. It's not to be bonding on the committee, it's not to sort of a consultant, and not to bond a consultant to move in any particular direction. It's to advise and to give the consultant the opinion of the stakeholders downtown, but not to actually have any decision-making authority to guide to actually tell the consultant, no, we don't want you to do this, we want you to do that.
Okay, so just to be clear, it's for discussion and feedback on the different things that come up through the different meetings and ideas and things like that, and not so much to say, yes, we are going with this wide of sidewalks or anything like that. Perfect.
I do understand the membership process that you were just alluding to. However, I wonder if we shouldn't, just my recommendation would be to take the maximum of 5 members representing the downtown business, reduce that to 4, reduce the maximum of 5 members reducing for the arts and culture, reduce that to 4, and have 2 members from the general public also on this board, so that anybody that is just a general person, because it really is important to see what's going to bring someone that's going to go shopping normally down in the Walmart or Superstore areas, what's going to bring them to the downtown. I think it's important to note what would bring just a general person downtown. What could the RFP, what could we do to our downtown to intrigue and attract just normal people, right? And I don't think we have anything, well, it's true, I don't think we have anything in this area that really, it's what's going to make someone come and shop downtown, right? That input matters, I think, rather than just, because we already have businesses downtown. They know what's going to make them their thrive, they know what they want for their downtown to look like. But we want to know what's going to make the people that are shopping, or those teenagers, or those kind of people. We do have the youth, I understand that. But what's going to make just a normal Joe Blow person come downtown to eat dinner rather than go out west? It's just an idea. And perhaps one of those still may be a business owner. They could fall under two criteria, right? But I just feel it's important to intrigue all the public or include all the public, where narrowing this down doesn't give the opportunity. If you're not on a church group or you're not in arts and culture, it doesn't give the public the opportunity to be on this board to have that input.
It's a really good point, and we'll consider that there's some room there because we have 5 members. Some of these members may be both a business owner and a member of the arts community. It may be a business that operates as a would qualify as an arts community, but they may also be property owners as well.
Right.
So we would have that would be, we wouldn't need one. We would just use that as one person then
Right.
to do that, and then we could use 2 general members of the public.
I just think it's important to see what's actually going to get people downtown, right? And have their, hey, maybe if there was this downtown, I would come downtown. So just having that little bit of input from the general individuals. But,
Exactly, thank you. And what we're doing is promoting the downtown as a destination.
right? And so what's
place.
going to bring you down there?
Exactly.
These people already know what's great about the downtown, so just people that don't come down, it's just my opinion, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councilor Baker, you have a comment, and then I'll follow up with a comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. This particular subject is probably the toughest subject anybody in this room will ever face, is a downtown redevelopment. There's 2 key parts to it in my mind, and I've witnessed this in another town. Excuse me, Your Worship. First of all, there's the municipal infrastructure and municipal properties. That's one side of it. The other side of it is privately owned real estate. So when you're developing a plan, and this is a huge area, you look at the number of blocks in this redevelopment plan, it's huge. You'll be good for 50 years if you stick with your plan. So the question is, if the municipality is involved and there's tax dollars involved, they can reinvest in sewer and water, streets and roads, and the important things like you're doing right now, out on 50th there or whatever it is. But what do you do with all the privately owned real estate? And a lot of that real estate is owned by absentee owners, and they live far and wide. And a lot of those buildings are obsolete. I'm sure they are. They're really obsolete when you get underneath them and get into the basements and see what's going on. So I'm not opposed to any of it. I'm saying, what do we really mean by redevelopment? What do we really mean? Because that's the big question. Because there's hundreds of millions of dollars to be spent by somebody downtown if you're going to redevelop. And I use an example, is Smithers, BC. It was 3 blocks or 5 blocks. They're Main Street, let's call it Main Street. Everybody's got one of those. They decided on an alpine theme. And probably 20 years ago. And they got a buy-in from most of the businessmen. And you can check that one out. I don't know, but they upgraded their buildings. I don't know if it was all dressing on the front or not, but a lot of it would certainly be front dressing. But they turned the street into an alpine because they have ski resort and things like that. So I'm not referring to do that, I'm just saying, but it took them a long time. And Mrs. Young was the mayor at the time, and I spoke to her about it because I was curious. And she said, Ken, it was a big job. It took years to get everybody to buy in. So, not to say anything against the report, what is it we mean by redevelopment? I'd like to hear that defined somewhere along the way. I know what it means in the dictionary, but how are we finding it in the context as it's presented? Because I just don't know where you start.
if I may, and say you can feel free to fill in any blanks. That's what this report should hopefully give us as a starting point. What we know now is, we all have different ideas on how the downtown should be redeveloped. We agree on one thing, is that it should be redeveloped. So this will help us with that direction and show us, will give us options of how we should proceed with the redevelopment of downtown. Sam, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
When I started this in 2016, when I came in here, the first presentation I made was actually on this one. Now, every growth and development in any city starts with a vision. And that vision has to be cast. If you don't know where you are going, you are not going to get anywhere, because all you're going to be doing is going everywhere. And the purpose of this, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but for this one though, like my supervisor just said, it's just to lay the framework for what needs to be done. But beyond that, again, it takes us to the implementation. Because one challenge we have with most plans is that they're beautiful plans, but they're not implementable. And they just stay on the shelf and nobody does anything about it. That's why the component of funding and how things are going to get injected to ensure that the downtown actually, or the plan actually gets implemented, is going to be built into this one. That's why we said our plan is more like the High River plan after the flood. There is something desperate they needed to do at that time, and then, but if we look at, that was 2013. Now, if we go back to High River now, it's totally, you will not even know that anything happened and that the flood happened, because they have now been able to rejuvenate not only just the downtown, the way it was before, but are able to now put a vision that the people can buy into and own into that downtown. That's what we're trying to do. And I think, well, I don't know, I don't need to justify this because I know council actually knows the import of this, and I know that's why you said it's very, very important. And for the essence of that is why we're very serious about this and making sure that we have all the members, all the partners at the table, either as committee members or people who are going to be commenting through the process to ensure that this plan, when it's done, it's not going to just be the responsibility of council. It's going to be the responsibility of every single one of us in the city of Lloyd Minster.
Councilor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. One thing I wanted to be clear on after Councilor Baker asked a question and referred to buildings that were in potentially states of disrepair underneath them. One of the things that I was under the impression that this DARP does is provide somewhat of an area structure plan for the area. So if ever there is one of these buildings that needs to be taken down and they're going to rebuild something, it's according to some standards so that it fits the downtown vision, correct?
Yes, and even in line with that too, every single area is just like you have an area structure plan where you stage growth and development. Areas are going to be identified based on priorities, and those priorities are the ones, priority number one is the one we're going to first face, or that becomes the first stage, and then that's phased over time until the whole thing gets fully implemented. And then as you are going through, you are tweaking it, because things change over time. That's why we say this is going to be a living plan that actually you can tweak as we go, as things change, as realities actually get a little bit different than when we started the plan.
Awesome. Thank you.
And if my understanding is correct, it's just the exact same as an area structure plan for any other area of our community, correct?
Yes.
And it's also going to be an excellent economic development tool for that as well.
Oh, yes.
Right? She can take that to different cities and different businesses and allow them the opportunity of what our downtown has.
Exactly. Yes.
Right? And as far as the absentee business owners, I think it actually gives the obligation for them to have to upkeep and have to do certain things once we adopt this. They can't let it completely run down, or else we will have to condemn it, and that will be taken down at their expense. Is that correct?
I'm not sure of that, Councilor. That moves into a gray area that we won't.
Right, just depending on what whatever. But there are going to be things that people are going to have to upkeep according to this area redevelopment plan once we accept it.
Exactly, and that's what's going to be in the bylaw that attention is in terms of what needs to be done, what level of upkeep needs to be there. But beyond that, again, there's the international flavor to this, which you mentioned. airport just open for business. We're going to be flying everywhere now. We can actually have targeted business person in Japan who's coming in here, flying in here to do business here in the downtown. Those are the kind of, I would say, opportunities that we're trying to target. And if we don't grow it, if we don't develop it, it's not going to happen.
Perfect.
Sam,
Thanks, Sam.
another word for the advisory committee that someone asked me was, would it be a champion? Would these be the 11 or 12, 15 champions for the city outside this council that would be working to try and encourage people to get involved as we talk about public engagement and all that discussion? This committee would be, they'd be bouncing ideas, but hopefully they would champion this whole, this thing, so it's just an extension. It's like, without voting, but just being that people that will champion that. Is that a good way to look at it?
Yes, exactly. That's the fact. Kind of summarize the purpose of the committee. Yes, they are intended to be championed beyond council, because it's not. One thing I know about plans is that plans are not essentially the responsibility of council. You make the policy, you get this thing going, but again, people have to own it. And these are the people who own it and take it and take it fully to implementation. So it doesn't matter which council is there. Once the vision is sold to those who are going to implement it, then they own it. And so it's just going to get implemented.
And I hope this committee would take that upon themselves. And I hear what councillors have said. We want to make sure we get as broad of input, and that's where that committee will help to drive that input. It's not going to be those 11 people setting the agenda. I think that they will help lead to the mass of the people that are downtown today, the businesses, the residents of this city, and people that come from outside to shop and use the downtown facilities. We want to ensure that we get as much information into that report so that we get the best information to build a decision to go forward.
That's exactly correct.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Sam? Thank you very much, Sam. Mr. Morrison stepping out for a moment. All right. I'll move to the city manager to 4.7.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll call Terry Burton to come forward to discuss 4.7, budget reallocation.
Good afternoon, Terry.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to bring forward 4 key projects that obviously we missed the 2018 budget officially with these projects, and we're looking to provide some background information for these ones and ultimately bring this forward to future council for a budget reallocation. On all 4 of these ones, these are contractual obligations as well, and as such, that part of it. The 4 projects are the 2013 street improvement program, value of about $3,000. This is just to close things out. There was some minor deficiency work that was supposed to be completed last year on this one, and probably the year before and stuff like that, but it's finally going to be done this year and stuff like that. The 2016 street improvement program, this is some carryover work associated. Some of it is for the 25th Street work that we are seeing out there. Majority of that is on the contractor's expense part of that part of it, but other warranty work and deficiency work that is associated with it, as well as consultant fees. The 2016 street improvement program was, we had Bar Engineering as our contract management for that program. The 44th Street and 62nd Avenue functional plan, this was completed last year. Unfortunately, our consultant issued the last final payment in March of this year. And just timing on that one delayed us in getting that one done. So this is just to complete the actual final payment for them. On the 2015 water and sewer, or sanitary sewer replacement program, again working for a little bit of money for that one to cover off costs associated with completing the final acceptance certificate. So this is the FAC, as I call it. This certificate is issued after the 2-year warranty period is finalized. And as part of that 2-year warranty period, we do one final inspection and note any deficiencies and how the contractor will complete that stuff as well. So in total, about $86,000 in total, and most of it's all within the 2016 aspect of things. So I'll open up to questions from there.
Councilors, any questions, comments? Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. Director Terry, final acceptance certificates, wouldn't they be part of the consulting engineer's initial proposal, like he has to sign off on the project?
It's in the work, it's just a matter of the dollar associated with doing that work is held back. So we don't pay them out fully for that, we only pay them for the work that they complete,
Okay.
and that extra work associated with completing the
Is
certificates.
this part of the budget?
Yes.
Okay, it's in the budget.
Yeah.
Okay, that answers that one. The other one, the $76,000 one, we refer to warranty and to consult, warranty and deficiency work and warranty work. Is that the 25th Street project?
That is a piece of it. That one is just more for consultant costs associated with overseeing the construction side of things.
Would the contractors be responsible for any of those extra engineering costs because of the faulty work?
There's a portion of that we're looking into. Part of the agreement right now, the contractor is working on their part of it as we speak. But that could be a part that we can talk about.
Okay, thank you.
City Manager?
Thank you, Worship. Just to be clear, the reason we're here is because this wasn't added as a carry forward for previous year's budgets into the 2018 budget, so that's why we're asking for the allocation. So it was in the budget at the time the contracts were awarded with the
Thanks for
board
clearing
here,
that up,
but
because pretty important.
we just need to reallocate from a carry forward from previous years.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I think that was the question I had too. I think that, thank you, Councilor Member. From that perspective, I guess that the important part, and you've said it, Terry, thank you very much. I want to make sure we've had a lot of comments in the public. Did you guys just page 25th? Yes, we did. We're going back to fix what wasn't quite right. It's not at the cost of the taxpayers. It happens. Just like when you buy a new vehicle, if things aren't quite right, they have to fix it. We're getting our streets fixed. And in this case, there is some additional cost, but it's not, we'll work through that with the contractor. They're paid for the paving, but they have to oversee. And if that's what insures warranty, I guess that's a cost that we have.
Yeah, you're right, Your Worship. It's just making sure that we're getting a quality product in there.
Absolutely.
We may have to pay the extra couple of dollars just to make sure that is actually happening. Yes.
I know that no one likes to pay more, but if that's what it means for us to ensure that we're getting that quality, that's why we hire consultants and do those things and hold their feet to the fire if need be. So, from that perspective. No other comments? Questions? Okay, thank you very much, Terry. We'll bring Councilor Thorson back in. Still got a job, Councilor, you're okay. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, governance and priorities. Look to the city manager.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll call Natasha for planning and development to discuss item 5.1, land use bylaw.
Good afternoon, Natasha.
Good afternoon, Your Worship, Council. So I'm here to present an item that pertains to some changes that the Alberta government has recently made to the MGA. As I'm sure some of you have been aware, they've been working for years to update this document. As per the Lloydminster Charter, planning and development in Lloydminster is regulated by Part 17 of the MGA. On October 26th of last year, the province of Alberta approved 3 orders in council pertaining to the MGA. They came into force in effect on October 26th of last year, January 1st of this year, and April 1st of this year. This land use bylaw amendment pertains specifically to the changes that were made as of October 26, 2017. The latter 2 proposed changes had no effect on our land use bylaw. A summary of these changes include the ability to electronically advertise. We included this as an additional means of advertising to what we already do. Administration feels the city is not quite ready to go 100% electronic advertising, so we'll still send out written letters and advertise in local newspapers. Stop orders and development appeals clarity has been added to the requirements around dates of approval and length of appeal time. Subdivision applications has added clarity along timelines for complete applications. notification requirements, incomplete applications, and deemed refused. And very similar with development permit applications. A lot of these amendments are administrative in nature. I don't think council will see on a day-to-day basis any changes of these applications of what you see from us. Administration feels these changes will streamline the process, maintain transparency and consistency, and give applicants a better idea of when they can expect a decision to be made. I think it should also be noted that even though these changes to the MGA are not currently reflected in our bylaws, since they are legislated by the MGA, we are already required to adhere to them, and administration has already begun to change some of our processes to ensure compliancy. Writing them into our land use bylaw will just add clarity for current and future administrations as well as the applicant.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Realistically, a housekeeping item, right?
Very much.
I mean, there's nothing that we're going to do to change anything that's done in the MGA. The only question I have is this it? Are you expecting in the near future any more changes to this that we're aware of?
Doug can maybe speak to it more. To my knowledge, these three.
As we understand it, the province is moving through with the Modernization of Municipal Government Act, and they are coming out with regulations. We may see some more. Part 17 is the only piece of the MMGA that applies to us, so those would be where we see those effects. As we look forward with the charter, then we'd see some more opportunity to modernize.
So realistically, though, at this point, we're not wasting staff time. We're not jumping the gun. We're not just going to have to do this again in a month. We're pretty confident there's probably going to be changes coming, but not right away.
Yeah.
As confident as you can be.
Yes. You're asking me to tell you what the Alberta government's going to do.
Yeah.
And like I said, the changes that I'm implementing in this land use bylaw amendment came into force in effect in October. As soon as they came into force in effect, we started changing our administrative processes because we are required to comply. This is now, like you said, the housekeeping item of bringing everything up to compliance.
Housekeeping, carry on.
Absolutely. Council, any other direct questions? I think, thank you very much, Natasha, for planning and development, because we know the MGA has been long overdue. We've been working through it, and we just stay tuned. As the city clerk advised, we don't know what the government of Alberta is going to tell us next, so we'll just wait and see. And as Councilor Baker reminds me, we have to play at the sandbox with the bigger kids, so that they've got the big stick in this matter, and all we're doing is catching up. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see other matters listed, but I would just like to bring one matter to this committee at this time, is that our communications team has recently completed the 2017 report to the community, and I just wanted to bring it to the public's attention. This document is 26 pages, and it talks about some of the things that have gone on over this past year. I'd encourage people to either pick up a hard copy, or I believe it is online, so that they can view it as well. And it would be there for their reading enjoyment. It certainly highlights a lot of the things that went on in 2017, from the governance review to Pinty's to a lot of things that covers a broad perspective from governance, finance, development, growth, community services, parks, recreation, and family and community support services. So thank you to the team in the communications group for putting that together. I hope people take the opportunity. It's a good marketing tool for economic development to show that our community is very much alive and enthusiastic. So thank you again. I just wanted to bring that to people's attention. At this time, I'll look to inquiries from the media.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are media requests for yourself, Mayor Albers, as well as Councilors Torreson and Monroe.
Thank you very much. I'll look to this for direction. Recess motion, seconded. Councilor Fagnan, all in favor? Opposed, carried.